Okay, you'll see a got it come in about this meeting being live streamed.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, hi
Right.
everybody. I'm Jan Carlson. I'm president of the Upper Midwest Bead Society. And this is a Let's Bead Live without Rochelle today, because Rochelle is at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival. So we've got a really fun session going today with Maggie Thompson, who's going to talk about kumihimo supplies, and with Hannah Rosner, who's going to talk about bead embroidery supplies, and they'll both do some demos. So let's turn it over to Maggie to start us out. And if you would change your views to speaker and mute, except if you want to ask a question, and I'm sure they'll be happy to entertain questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okie dokie. Oops, there's another one. I just admitted Joyce Edmondson.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Joyce.
Okay, so I have lots to show and tell here. So I think the first thing I'll do before getting to the screen share is just give you a brief little history of kumihimo, which is a Japanese braiding technique. It's, you know, all kinds of different cord numbers, depending on what kind of braids you want to get. Anyway, it started a couple thousand years ago in Japan. It was used, of course, with silk cord and used to make cords for kimonos. It was also used to make horse tack, of all things, and cords to tie on the samurai armor plate. You know, they would make the plates and, you know, tie them over the shoulders and along the sides and stuff. And that of course went on for centuries, and it's gradually migrated west, you know, and across Europe, and jumped the ocean and came to the US. And at some point in the last 40 or 50 years, we decided we needed to add beads and bling. And it was enough of just the cords and the fibers. So that's what I do, is I do, you know, basically two different kinds. The basic 8-cord spiral called Congo Gumi. And then I do a 7-cord, quote unquote, fill the gap technique. So I am given, and that is about as brief a history as you'll ever hear about Kumi. Okay, so this is my first show and tell, and this is equipment that you'll need. And what I think I'll do is switch to this one first. Obviously, you need a disc and bobbins. These are the unweighted bobbins. And if you'll notice on these, my little trick is I cut a slit in the backside, and then that's where I anchor the end of my cord, so I don't have to tie knots and tie and untie. There are also weighted bobbins like this, which are useful, you know, and it's strictly a personal preference what you use. You can make these weighted bobbins if you go to your hardware store and buy some washers and glue them on. So I'm gonna move me over a little here so you don't keep seeing my left ear. And then the weight, you have to have a weight to give you the correct tension. Sorry, I'm demonstrating in real time here, not on the camera. And there are other kinds of discs. This is a foam disc. This is single density. There's also a double density version, which is obviously twice as thick. Again, it's all personal preference. You know, what do you feel comfortable with? Now, some other things that you might want to invest in. Super glue gel, which is my go-to glue for end caps, like that. or other types of end caps. A bead tray, bead scoop. Obviously, you want a little ruler, scissors, a cord zap. And I like this big one. Not everybody does, but I like this one. I call it my house on fire because it burns through really, really hot and really fast, just cuts right through the cords. And you might end up needing a big eye needle. And a big eye needle is something that is called a big eye because, of course, it splits in the middle. And there we go. Like that. And you put your cord through the middle, and then you can, load on all your beads. And this goes through size 8 beads easily. Obviously, at larger size beads, beads with smaller holes, not so much. And so that is why I also use this Insta needle. And this is something that was originally designed by a company called Paleo Bond. They're in Colorado. And it was designed as glue for dinosaur bones. Well, we don't really need anything quite that strong. So what I do is I use one of these, open this up, and it's a 2-part epoxy. And what I do for my cords is I just take one bottle, open it up, dip the cord in, wipe it off with a paper towel, and then cut that off at a 45-degree angle. And you've made yourself a needle on the end of your cord. And I've gotten that through pearl holes, which are notoriously tiny. So this stuff I highly recommend. And it's not cheap, but then if you're only using one bottle at a time, it lasts you twice as long. Okay, next. Hold on. Next tray. Okay. And this is my shameless marketing here. This is my kumihimo stand that I invented. It's called the Traveler. And you can see that it breaks down, and you can carry this in a bag or throw it in your purse. And I have directions on how to put it together. And this is what it looks like from the side when you put it together. Goes up like this. And then you take these off the back and put your disc on top. And then your disc will come on and off with Velcro. So you can interchange your discs. And this comes apart fairly easily. Obviously this is, and you just have to wiggle. And I make these pretty tight, the holes, because I obviously don't want them to wobble and, the whole thing falls apart on you. Man, I made these pretty good, didn't I? And that's what you do. So, and you can tell this is a brand new one, and as you use it more. Okay, so moving onward. Next tray. Cords. What kind of cords are you going to use? And there are lots and lots of different, oops, I'm crooked here. Lots and lots of different choices. These are just a few that I put out. Obviously, the one that isn't on here is yarn. And there are a lot of people who will use, fancy yarns. And that's lovely. There's also ribbon. And this is 2mm silk cord. This is 2 millimeter satin rat tail is what it's referred to as. It's satin cord. And if somebody says rat tail to you, this is what they're talking about. And then this is Superlon or Ceylon, depends on where you get it. And actually, it's both brands are made by the same company, and they are exactly the same cords. So you'll be getting exactly the same thing. I think they come in different colors and different sizes. These spools are all about 77 yards, I believe. This is the micro cord, which is really good for earrings and smaller hole items. Then this is the Tex 135, it's called. And I don't know what that refers to. I just know that that's what it's called. This is the Tex 210, which is what you will see 99.9% of kumihimo braids made with. And this is the Tex 400, which is thicker. And you can see that. And just depends on what it is you want to do, what kind of look you're going for, what beads are you using, as to what you want to use. Now, my next tray is samples of what I've made with those different kinds of cords. Now, this right here, this particular necklace, this part was made with the 2 millimeter satin cord, and I did a 7-cord fill the gap braid. And then I connected it at the bottom to an 8-cord Congo Gumi spiral braid that is mostly daggers, 1-hole daggers. So you can, I mean, it's just your imagination that's the only thing that's limiting you. Now, this is a bracelet that's made with size 8 seed beads and the 2 millimeter silk cords. Very simple, but you get a nice little statement bracelet. These earrings, they were made with the micro cord, and I used the dragon scale beads on that. Is that a little better in focus? Okay. And so you can see it depends on what your what your use is as to what which cords and which beads you're going to use. Okay, so this necklace I used braid, 2 different kinds of braids, a couple of 3 different colors of size 8 seed beads with the Tex 210 cord, so you can combine them. And this is again a 7-cord, and I also added in some 6 millimeter fire polish. That's kind of hard to see. I'm not doing too well with the light here. And then all got connected to one end cap, and then just put some dangles on it. And this one has no clasp, as did the other one. Now, this one is one of my most complicated designs. This is actually a round braid in the middle and I used the Tex 210 with this, started off with a check button, loaded up the size 8 beads and the 2-hole bricks, and then split those and did bead weaving embellishment 2 layers out along the sides, and made the button and loop, made the loop closure here.
So Maggie, what are the beads in the center again?
The center is size 8 beads and 2-hole bricks.
Oh, and the bricks are how you attach the edging then?
Yeah, and the bricks are braided right into the braid.
Okay, so the brick sticks out and that's what you
Yeah,
catch.
and then you
Okay,
flip
gotcha.
the bricks to each side, and then you know, with bead weaving, then I went with the 2-hole lentils was my next layer out. And then after that, I did the 2nd hole of the lentils and embellished that.
Oh,
out
very
the
nice.
side. So, like I said, you can go as complicated as you want, you know, or as simple as you want. And depending on what beads you're using, what's the look you're going for, you have all kinds of choices. Now, holy crap, I'm only 15 minutes in here. Now, this is the 8-cord disc set up. Okay, so you start, and I've got some beads, you know, strung on here, and I'm using my unweighted 2.5-inch bobbins. These, and those are my favorites. I use those most of the time because I can put enough beads on there for a necklace as well as fewer beads on for a bracelet. So the basic Kumi 8-cord Congo Gumi, which you will see most people making, is a simple left cord straight up, top right cord straight down, never cross. If it starts on the left, it stays on the left, starts on the right, stays on the right, and a 1/4 turn, and I turn counterclockwise. Those are your 3 moves. So here you go again. Left cord straight up, right cord straight down, 1/4 turn. And then you just keep repeating that. Left, right, turn. Left, right, and a turn. Now, when I get to 30 at the top, that's usually when I have done enough that when I start dropping the beads, they'll drop right under the cord. So that's what you do. Your left cord, same move, but you're dropping a bead. And I don't know how I can make you see this better. You know what, maybe we'll just flip. I'll stop the share for a second. And
I could see it.
and then speaker, okay. And see if you can see that. You drop your bead underneath the crossing cord. And then we'll go back to the share here. Okay. And then every time you move a cord after that, hold on. Every time you move a cord after that, you drop a bead.
Maggie, if you put like a piece of white paper or something underneath the
That
hole,
would help? Okay, I'll give that a shot. In fact, I'll take the weight off and does
Oh,
that
yeah.
help?
Now you can see.
And you can see the bead is there. So I'll do my 1/4 turn and pick up a bead, drop it under this crossing cord here, lay this one over the top, and then just snug it into the slot. And now the right hand one, that gets dropped down. And then you make your 1/4 turn. Is that a little clearer?
Yes.
Good. Now the thing that you have to know, obviously, I can't continue very far with this without the weight in the middle, because that's how you get your braid tension. The weight hangs down the middle. And then, of course, you control the bobbin tension by the slots in the disc. Now, when you want to take a break or stop, you turn your disc 1/4 turn and do your bottom left up. And then leave it like that with 3 at the top, or what I call 3 in the tree. And then you'll always know that you're going to start with your top right, so you don't lose your place. And a couple of things to remember. The number one is when you start doing your braid, if you start moving doing your 1/4 turn counterclockwise, stay with that. If you switch and go back and forth, you'll end up with a hole in your braid. Which, you know, that may be your design process. That might be what you're looking for, but if you're not, if you're looking for a solid braid, you've got to go the same direction. Now, there are people who do their lefts and rights opposite from me, and people who turn clockwise. Doesn't matter. You'll end up with the same braid. You just, however you start, stay with it. Okay, and so that's our 8 cord, and that was very, very, very basic beginner.
One thing that you taught me that was really helpful is
Yeah.
always keep your work surface level with the top of the disc.
Yes, keep your braid. Good point there. And I'll show you that. I'll take off the weight here. If you can see, all the cords are level with the top of the disc. They're not pulled down like this, or they're not pushed up. And they're in the center of the hole. If you get it off too far to one side and you're dropping beads, you're going to have a hard time dropping your beads nicely. So yes, good point. Thank you, Becky. All righty. So, and this 8 cord technique is the one that we're going to be doing at the retreat for the class that I'll be teaching, and I'll talk more about that class after I'm done with this. Now, this is the 7 cord fill the gap, and what you do is you just flip your disc over. You know, you've got your regular disc here. You flip it over and put your letters A through H evenly spaced. Put your 8 cords on A through G and leave H open, which is the gap you're going to be filling. Now, on this 7 cord, I in general don't put my cords, ribbons, whatever I'm using into the slot, and I use a weighted bobbin. So I'm kind of using this as a mini Meridai. And I didn't talk about Meridais. Meridais are the original equipment that people, you know, that Kumi was developed on. And they're huge stands, you know, like this, and they're about the size of an end table. And they're beautiful pieces of equipment, but they're huge and they're hard to carry around, hence my little traveler stand. Okay, so the 7 cord is exactly that. You fill the gap. You start with A, and you don't have to have letters. You could start with numbers 1 through 8. So you go A goes to H, and obviously you don't have to put your cord in the slot. because the weighted bobbin holds it there. So you go from A to H, and then B goes to, again, the open slot. And C goes to the next open one. And D here. And then you go to E and F and G and H. And you've done one round.
So
And-
basically you're picking up the cord that's 2 to the left of the open hole? No, 3 to the left
1, 2, 3 to the left, yeah.
of the open hole. I got it.
And these are all of these letters are 4 slots apart. So A is here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so do it again. And if you were going to drop beads, you would start with A and you'd take a bead and you would drop it, and it would go underneath this crossing cord. And I don't have beads on here at the moment, but the same with each and every cord. If you're going to drop beads, you would do it just the same as with the 8 cord. And G and H. And like I showed you with this one, let me just move this for a second. With this necklace, I combined the ribbons, 2 different colors of ribbon, and I think these are 1/4 inch ribbons. And 2 different colors of seed beads, gold and the turquoise on the superlon, and you just braid the ribbons, or when you come to the beads, you drop a bead. So you just do whatever it is you're going to do as it comes up on your disc. And so this has its uses, and there are so many different kinds of braids. If you Google kumihimo, you'll come up with, I don't know, there's got to be 100 or more different kinds of braids you can use, all the way up to 64 cords and more. I did a 16 cord braid once, and never again, because it was too many beads, too many cords, and I didn't think it looked that much better than the 8 cord. So I just said, okay, been there, done that, tried it, I'm done with that. Okay, so let's see. Next, I guess we'll stop the share and I'll go back to being just me here again. I'm going to talk just briefly about the class I'm going to be teaching this weekend, or not this weekend, next week at retreat, week and a half from now. I'm going to be teaching one called
Easy peasy.
Easy Peasy. Thank you. Man, too many names in my head. And it's a very easy bracelet to make, obviously, easy peasy. And we'll be braiding around a suede core, and then turning that core into an adjustable clasp.
Okay.
And I would go get the sample, but it's downstairs packed away in boxes ready to go to retreat. So I think I'll leave it down there for now. And just so everybody knows, my stands are on sale for 20% off for the month of September. So I'll bring a few of those to the retreat. And I will also have 5 different stands set up as demos. So anybody taking the class, or even outside the class, can go ahead and try them. And I'll have the stand set up with the disc on it, and I'll have the bobbins and the weight ready to go. So anybody can try it. And my Kumi kit, which includes the disc, the bobbins, the weight, a bead scoop, and a big eye needle, is 25% off for this month at $10 for that whole package. So for $42, you can get everything you could possibly need to try a new beading technique, new hobby. All righty. I thought I'd be wordier, but apparently not. So go ahead. Anybody got any questions? Oh, and I should say, sorry, one more thing. On the website, on the calendar page, I've uploaded 5 different PDFs. One is the 8-chord directions. One is the 7-chord directions. Another one is my tips and tricks. And another one is a free pattern. And yeah, I can't remember what the 5th one was. Oh yeah, how to use that Instant needle to stiffen your cord ends. So those are all free downloads on the calendar page on UMBS. Alrighty, now we'll get to questions. Or was I so good?
No,
Which
just
I
wanna say-
never believe. Yes, Jess Joyce.
that was great. A friend of mine, Luella, bought me one of your stands, and it's been a real help to me. I find that I go a little faster taking it off the stand when I'm really going, but when I'm
Mhm.
setting up and I got to focus on the pattern and load all the beads and blah blah, it's great. I love it. Thank you. And I loved your tips. I can't wait to try the 7 braid. I haven't tried that one.
Yeah, that's a fun one to do. It goes faster than the 8-chord, surprisingly faster.
Yay.
What the stand does is free your hands. You don't have to hold the disc.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can actually braid with 2 hands instead of wasting one hand holding the disc, and you're moving the cords and dropping the bead and then trying to put the cord in, you know, from.
And a lot of times I'll reach underneath with my finger to put that bead in place too.
Mhm. Yeah, however it works for you. I mean, and everybody's going to have their own, you know, little different techniques that they use. And I found that this stand gives me better braids. Tension is better, much better than if you're just using one hand to braid. And it's not so hard on your hands, of course, with the arthritis knuckles here. It makes a difference. Plus, you know, if you're in the middle of it, you just leave your disc on the stand right where it is. And unless you have, you know, cats, dogs, kids that like to play with your toys instead of theirs, it should stay right where it is, and you can start, you know, and continue with your project. Okay.
Maggie, can you hear me?
Yep,
Can you hear
I
me,
can.
Maggie? Okay, Kathy says, great presentation. Do you want to plug your monthly classes? And I think you should.
I do. I have classes at Lotus Bead Shop in the Mall of America, 2 Tuesdays a month. I've got a really nice group of regulars who come, 4 to 5 women who come every other Tuesday. And if you want to sign up for a class, you can go to the Lotus website, Lotus Beads and Jewelry, and sign up. It's $10 to sign up for the class. And then all I charge is the cost of the kit. And we have something picked out, you know, every class period. And if there's homework, I bring the kits ahead of time and sell them at the class before. And then my students do their homework, and then because we've done that a couple of times with ones that we're doing more embellishments on. So the homework is make the braid, bring it in, we'll do the embellishments and put on the clasp and everything in class. So thank you. That was nice of you to say so.
Give me a second and I'll put that link into the group chat. Hang tight. There we go. Maggie, I also put your Etsy store in. Do you want your other store put in?
Yeah, Etsy has my stands on there. But other than that, it's strictly PDF downloads for patterns.
Okay, well,
My
tell me
website,
your other.
yeah, my website is maggietdesigns.com.
Oh,
Really
easy.
very easy. And that is where I have all my physical products, kits, supplies, as well as my stand. I sell my stand there too. I have a large following on Etsy, and so I leave my stand there as a listing, but everything else is on my regular website.
Super. Thank
So
you.
there it is.
Maggie, you're also going to Mesa, right?
Yes, Lisa and I will be going to the Bead Fest Mesa show. That's at the end of October. This is a new one for Bead Fest. It's one of their maker fests. And Rochelle and I went to the one in Lancaster, Pennsylvania at the beginning of August and just did killer. It was a great show. And so I'm hoping that Mesa will be the same. Lisa and I will also be going to the Not Just Beads Greenfield, Wisconsin show the 8th of October. And it's just a one afternoon, one Sunday, Saturday or Sunday afternoon. And you know, we've never done it before, so I'm not really sure what to expect. Suze Klum has done it from Glass Garden Beads and recommended it. And so the promoters run a shop in Greenfield called Not Just Beads, KNOT, Not Just Beads. And they got a hold of me and asked if we wanted to come. So I said, sure, we'll give it a shot. It's close.
I love that.
Yeah. So, oh, and we're also, Lisa and I are also both doing the QFAM Gray's VEC, which is virtually ever crafting online classes. I'm doing 2 of them. It's for 5 days in October. And let's see if I can put on here. I think it's I'm not sure if that's it. We'll see if that works. No, that didn't go. Anyway, I'm doing 2 classes. One is just a little informational one on finishing off Kumi braids with crimp ends, different styles and types of crimp ends. That's just a little hour one. And then the other one is my angle bangle roll-on bracelet. And I can't see. Anyway, so and I posted on Facebook the virtually ever crafting. If you go to my Facebook page, which is Maggie Thompson, the link is on there to check that out. And Lisa's going to be doing one class, her Czarina ring, and that's right before Bead Fest. So this is all taking place all by the end of October.
Wow.
After that, we're both going to just sit around with our thumbs in our mouths going, boo, you know, being completely burnt out.
And Maggie, show us your necklace. Can you move your camera down just a little bit?
Oh, sure. This is,
Oh, wow.
I called it my black and
Oh,
white.
that's pretty.
And it's a Swarovski button. Yeah, I said that dirty word, Swarovski, didn't I?
Ooh.
And just a black and white braid, and then I put fringe on it, and I'm actually wearing the matching bracelet.
Wow, very
Which
nice.
has the crystals and the button. And that is very simple. Like I said, simple 8-cord braid.
That's lovely.
Well, thank you. And, you know, like I said, Kumi arrived here in the States and it didn't take us long to add all the bling. I mean, what else can
Toho
we do? We
Beads
add the
keeps
bling.
one. Sorry.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Toho Beads keeps wondering why we like so many colors here in the States.
Exactly.
They used to ask Kim that, Kim Tamarin, who owned Tambrooks, they'd ask her, why do you Americans want so many colors?
Silly wabbit.
I know.
Oh, what a silly question. Any other questions from anybody? Oh, there we go. Thanks, Hannah. At
sure.
virtuallycrafting.com. You can go to that and that'll show you everything. And there is just a ton of people who lots and lots of designers who teach, and it's all taught on Zoom.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So, and they've been going for quite a few years now, so they're well established. So we'll see. Lisa and I are both, this is our first year, giving that a shot.
Well, let us know. Let us know. We're excited to know how that goes, and also
Yep.
Mesa for you.
Mhm.
You went to Milwaukee too, didn't you?
Yep, Lisa and I did the Milwaukee show, and that was the first time that Bead Fest has done the Milwaukee show, and it was in the same venue as the old Bead and Button show. And it was a good show. It wasn't the blockbuster like Lancaster is in Pennsylvania, because that's where Bead Fest has been for years and years, minus the 2 years that they obviously closed for COVID. But yeah, and I'm hoping that, Milwaukee and Mesa are both going to go too. And they've made their shows not just Bead Fest, they're what they call Maker Fests. So they have yarn, sewing, art, and beads. And so you get a whole range of people who are attracted to the show, and people, they cross-pollinate and do a lot of the same, you need the same kinds of supplies to do different hobbies. Did I say that right? I hope I'm expressing myself well.
Well, it works really well for you because kumihimo is, for you, a melding of the fiber and the beads. And so it's really kind of right up your alley. It's a lot of what I do too is the
Right.
fiber and the beads. And so
Right.
it means my whole house is a studio, and probably yours also. But
right. And also, I combine kumihimo with bead weaving techniques too.
right.
As well as, different kinds of cords, ribbons, fibers, like you said, and as well as beads. So yeah, I like to mix it up.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks everybody for coming and listening to me talk about my favorite little subject here.
Well, and Maggie, maybe you mentioned this, but for someone who wants to just try out Kumi, the retreat would be a great place to do it because you'll have extra stands.
Absolutely, and I'll have 5 stands set up, and you can just, 5 different people can just use it and try it. And I did this at Lancaster in my make and take classes that I did right in my booth. And they're just little hour-long make and takes, simple to do. And I set it up, and people had a great time trying it. And, I sold a stand and discs and weights and a bobbin to, I think, every single person who used the stand. So yeah, it was
That's a great idea. Now, are you going to be there all the days or just one day at the retreat?
No, Lisa and I are both coming up on Wednesday. So we'll be staying overnight Wednesday. And then Thursday, we're going to do your class, my dear, Bead Embroidery, which I'm very much looking forward to. And then Thursday, I'll be doing my class.
Friday.
Yeah, Thursday is yours. Friday is mine. And I'm not sure when Lisa's going to be doing her class or classes.
We've got it listed on Wednesday night I
Okay.
think at 6:30, but she'll do it another time. She just hasn't figured out when.
I
And
think
what's
the
she
retreat's
doing?
going to be super fun.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what's she going to be doing.
She's gonna do that beaded bead that you can. You
Oh,
can
right,
actually
right.
Turn it into a Christmas ornament if you do.
Right. I knew that. Okay.
How fun is that?
Yeah. So, okay. So I'm handing the baton to you, Hannah.
Oh, all right. Give me just a second.
Hannah, when you speak, we see your your bead mat.
We see your cloth, not your lovely face.
Well, the reason is because I have two computers and, well, I have my phone, which is the bead mat, and I have my old laptop, which has a terrible microphone. So I have to turn one of them off,
Yes.
and then I can talk on the other one. And since the phone is the better of the two, I like to use that for close-ups on what I'm going to show. And what I'm going to be talking about today is a little bit of bead embroidery, but I'm going to show a couple of my favorite supplies. Now, a lot of my bead embroidery is no longer just basic bead embroidery. I add a lot of fiber and beads in together. This piece is one of my older pieces, a large color piece, and you can see that I've got some brass in there. I've got some of the S word in there. I've got a button here at the center. I've got some fluffy fiber and some elkite up here. So for me, something like Maker Fest really works beautifully too. And I have some fringe, which probably doesn't surprise many people who
Is
know
that a
my work.
necklace? Is that a necklace?
It is a necklace. It's a gigundous one. And I don't know whether or not you can see me in this view over here, but so this is what it looks like when it's on. It's a huge piece.
I can't see you.
So let's see if I
Oh,
can.
there we go.
Yeah, let's see if I can. So this is this huge piece.
Yep.
So it's
That is
an
a necklace.
enormous, yeah, it's an enormous necklace that I made for when steampunk was really in style. So there's this old watch at the bottom. It's a round watch with some fringe, of course. Anyway, so I am going to show some basic bead embroidery techniques and also then show you a few techniques that give a little bit of a raised look. Now, if you're interested in trying, here's another one of my necklaces. This part up here is basic bead embroidery, but this was the first piece that I did for the Toho contest. Before it was the challenge every year, there were a number of different contests, and this is the first one that I did, but it's got bead embroidery up here and then some other stuff and fringe. So what I'm going to show you is some of my very favorite supplies, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you just the very basic bead embroidery stitch. Most people already know that. And then we'll talk about a few raised bead embroidery stitches that are just kind of fun and you don't see very often. So when I work on, I don't work on lacy stiff stuff, which is what most people actually do work on. I find it a little bit thin. I don't like the consistency. I feel like it bends easily and folds easily. So what I actually do is I go to Joann Fabrics. Nothing that I show you today, by the way, is something that's for sale in my store. It's all stuff that I'm going to tell you where you can get it. A lot of times it's Bobby Bead or Joann Fabrics, but what I do is I go to Joann Fabrics and I buy the thickest Hellon that I can find. Now, Pellon is usually used to stiffen collars or the front of coats, jackets. And I just really like it much better than the lacy stiff stuff. If I want to get it in color, I just get some markers. I really prefer the permanent ink markers, and I just marker it a little bit. So you can see that this one is white. It comes across as lacy stiff stuff. Now, I'm not saying that lacy stiff stuff is bad. I just prefer the Pellon, mainly because I can get it in huge rolls. I can get it, 3 yards. And when I get a 50% off coupon at Joann Fabrics, I can get it for $3 a yard instead of, $8 for a piece that's 8 by 10 inches.
Mhm.
So that's the first stuff that I tend to use, and you'll see me use that quite a bit. Now, in terms of thread, I love bead embroidery because you can kind of just throw everything at it. There's not one specific thing. So there are 3 different kinds of thread that I recommend for bead embroidery, depending on what you're doing. So 1G is a great thread. And of course, you can get that through Bobby Bead or your local bead store. And it's got a nice drape to it. It's really good for fringe. It's good for just about everything in bead embroidery. You have to give it a little tug and stretch it a little bit before you work. And the colors are really fast. They're really beautiful and bright. And so I just really, really do love bead embroidery with 1G. The only problem with the 1G is if you're using any kind of crystal, whether or not it's, Preciosa or whatever, it can cut it. Lately, I've been using an awful lot of silamide because my friend Kim Tamarin gave me a bucket of silamide. So I'm all heck bent on using it. I usually don't use this dark green. Generally, the colors that I use for most of my beadwork are, sorry about the noise here, throw things around. There we go. Generally, the colors I use are either this beige or this brown, but you can see that I'm running low on those guys. So I almost exclusively use beige or brown in my bead embroidery, but some people like to go ahead and match the bead embroidery to the beads. And in that case, I would go ahead and probably use the 1G once again. Fireline is the go-to for if you're using crystal or something sharp, whether or not they're stones. A lot of times the stones that you get that are Indian can have sharp edges. And so Fireline or Fused or Wildfire are both great. I know that Fireline has recently, Berkeley has stopped making it, but I do know that there's going to be a new company. They may already have started making it. The problem with Fireline is that for fringe, which is not heavy, mine is terribly heavy, so I can get away with Fireline, but for fringe that is light, if you use Fireline, then the Fireline can go ahead and get a curve to it that retains and can be unattractive. Now, I know I'm going back and forth a lot between fringe and bead embroidery, but for me, so much of what I do has that fringe attached to the embroidery. I can't help it, so please excuse me. Now, I'm sorry to confuse you a little bit here, but I want to go back a little bit. One of the things that I've forgotten to tell you about already is something that some of my friends have begun using instead of the lacy stiff stuff and the Pellon, and that is felt. Now, I don't like the regular felt. What I like is wool felt. And the nice thing about the wool felt that you don't get with the lacy stiff stuff and the Pellon is that it can come in these really, really beautiful bright colors. So if you do want your color to show behind the beads, you know, because if you're doing rows and they don't perfectly touch each other, then sometimes you can see that white behind, and you can either deal with it by, as I said, using a marker or oh, I will go back and talk about the silamide in just a minute, Terry. So if you have the need to show the beads or the fiber behind the beads on your bead embroidery, if your pieces and your beadwork is not tight up next to each other, you're using big beads and you see the fiber behind it. Sometimes this felt, this wool felt, can be a great thing. Now, I don't use it as is. I only buy wool felt because what I do, and I don't know if you can see that this piece, when I line them up, the piece on top is smaller. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason the piece on top is smaller, these started out the same, but I threw this in the washer and then the dryer, and so it felted it up even more than it was. It's stiffer. It's much more like the Pellon that I like. You can see this is kind of floppy and this is much stiffer. So it can work like it, and it also really gives it a nice surface to work on that doesn't fuzz up the way that acrylic felt does. Acrylic felt can fall apart, it can fuzz up, so I would never work on acrylic felt as a base, but I would get these, throw them in the washer at very hot, and then in the dryer at very hot, and then iron them, and they can be used instead of the Pellon. Once again, I don't tend to do it because I tend to work very tight and I don't tend to see the color behind. But if you notice on your beadwork that you have a tendency to see the white behind it, then you may want to consider these felt, this wool felt. I got it from Amazon, and it's about $20 for a pack of, I think there were about 10 colors in there. So it is relatively pricey, and if you have an allergy at all to felt, to wool, I should say, then you're not going to like working with it. Going back and answering the clarification on the silamide thread, no, silamide is not the best for crystals. What is the best for crystals is the fire line or wildfire, which I think I have some here in a second. Here's some wildfire. There we go, which looks very similar. The fire line and the wildfire come in both, they come in both clear and the smoke, which is what you can see right here. Let's see if I can show it to you at all. Oops, I'm off the screen. Sorry about that.
Hannah, you were saying you didn't know who was going to make Fireline.
Right.
Superline
Oh,
is
thank you.
going to make it,
Superline.
and I just got some.
Super. Okay. And how are you feeling about it? You've got the
I
clear
honestly,
though.
I haven't tried it yet.
Well, show
and
the
I
side
always
if
get,
you would.
I always
so
get the 8-pound
Mhm.
because that's, you know, for what I use it for.
Right. And I use either 6 or 8, whichever I grab first, because I've got, so if, Maggie, will you do a favor and show the side so they can see the clear color on that? That's the clear.
Yep.
As you can see, it's really more white. And here's the, on mine is the black, the smoke. Now the smoke has the problem. There you go.
And
The
I got the
smoke
black.
has the problem. Right. And the
So it
smoke
comes in
now,
crystal,
when you-
they just call it crystal and black.
Right. And with the old stuff, it was called smoke, and it did rub off a little on the hands. So I don't know
Yep.
whether or not the new stuff rubs off as much.
Well, let's give that a look, see, and I'll try it right now. You go ahead.
That sounds
keep
great.
going, and I'll let you know.
Now the wildfire does not, and the wildfire also I think comes in a green, which I don't have. So for crystals, Terry, I would recommend going with either the wildfire or the fireline. The silamide can get cut from the crystals. I like the silamide just because it's got that sort of slinkiness that the fiber has that the wildfire and the fireline don't have. And I have a ton of it, so I've been using a lot of it. No, it doesn't look like it's coming off at all.
Yeah, actually it does. You can see it just a little bit, not like Superline or Fireline did, but just a little bit.
Right.
Um,
And the wildfire doesn't tend to come off at all. So that is one good thing about the wildfire. So. Becky says that she has glued felt to Helen to increase the stiffness and still have the color. Now, if you are using any kind of glue to glue the felt to the Pellon or to the laces, I don't have it here, but what you want is E6000. You don't want to use super glue because then you cannot stitch through it. And that becomes really problematic in terms of different kinds of needles and getting through it. So you really want to use the E6000, which as I said, I've already sent my stuff away for the retreat. So I don't have any of that here to show you, but I think most of us have seen it. Now, the nice thing about bead embroidery is that you can use all kinds of different sizes and shapes of beads in there, and it really can all come together pretty nicely. And that's one of my favorite things about bead embroidery is that I will go in when I am doing a project and just find every bead I have that is in whatever palette I'm working, whether or not it's a 6 by 9 bead, which is what's going on here, or a cabochon, which I can glue down once again with E6000. This is a little check bead that I sewed down. Oh, there it is. What else? I have some bugles here. I've got some 8s. I've got some cubes. I've got some hex beads. They all can just get sort of thrown in there. And that's one of the reasons that I just really enjoy bead embroidery. So I'm not going to show you today how to put these on, but another thing that I like to add to bead embroidery, and the reason I'm not going to show you how to put these on today is not because I'm mean, but because next month we have a wonderful project by Lisa Comstock Bowling, who is going to show you how to use pup chain in bead embroidery. And I'll show you a picture of that in just a moment. So these are some cup chains that I've got, and I love to add cup chain because it's really, really easy to use and easy to sew on. So what I've got here is I've got some of the S cup chain, you know, the Austrian crystal that we don't mention anymore. This is some Swarovski cup chain. Let's see whether or not I can get, is that in focus for everybody? Yeah, okay.
Now it's good.
Okay, so this is, I love this because it's orange and it's got an orange, you know, you can get it with different tints of color. This is what I am using for my tambour embroidery project. So everybody who got a kit got some of this. So this one actually has sterling silver and the S word. And then this plastic stuff that's kind of fun that I found at Joann Fabrics. Now, the problem with this, I don't know if you can see this, but it has two separate fibers on the back, one on this side and one on this side. I'll draw it in a minute, whereas this just has a little piece that of metal that goes. So let me go ahead and get a piece of paper here and I'll draw that so you can see what I'm talking about a little bit better, because there's pros and cons of each. So this green one, which is all plastic and kind of fun and kind of glows in the dark a little bit. Oops, sorry. This one has the cup chain like this, and then it has two fibers. Is this on screen? Can you guys see that, or do I need to get it
Yes.
bigger?
No, we can
Okay.
see it.
Okay, so it has two fibers that run like that. They're two separate ones, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, the reason I'm saying that is I'll probably draw the same thing and tell you 1 for the next thing. But it means that when I want to curve it, if I wanted to curve it around a stone, what I have to do is I have to cut the outside. So I cut there, and there, and cut the outside thread so that it can curve a little bit better. Does that make sense to you? And I can use any of my three fibers to just go ahead, and I'll just go ahead and tack it down here, here, here. And sometimes I'll even go ahead and go across, even if it's cut. But I can use any of my fibers to do that with this. Now, once again, this is plastic and there's nothing I can do that doesn't make it look plastic, but it's kind of fun. This one and this one, and those of you who bought a kit for me for the retreat can take a look at it. These have cups that are square, and I know this looks the same, but this is a little piece of metal, and it's actually there we go. There we go. It's a little piece of metal that attaches them. Robin, I think you just texted me about kits, and I'm talking about kits for the retreat. I don't have kits for what I'm showing you today. So this has a little piece of metal, and it actually curves really beautifully, unlike the plastic one. So I can make some really gorgeous curves with this. With this, I really would recommend going ahead and using Fireline or Wildfire. Maggie, what's the new stuff called? It's called something different, isn't it?
It's called Eslon Fire.
Okay, Eslon. Is it like this? Eslon Fire?
Yep, exactly right.
Super, super, super. So I would use Eslon Fire or Fireline if you still have, or Wildfire if you're doing it across this metal, these metal pieces. I know that my friend Sherry Serafini actually goes ahead and she suggests gluing it down first. She does that using a tiny little bit of what's the word I'm looking for, of E6000, but I'm really glue impaired, so I just go ahead and stitch it down. When I glue things, I get glue on the back of my head and on the wall and in the other room. It's amazing. So anyway, so the last thing I think I'm going to show you is just some basic bead embroidery stitch, and then a few that you probably don't recognize. Am I running out of time or am I still okay?
Oh, no, you're way good.
Okay, super, super. But those are some of my favorite, favorite supplies. Once again, sort of, you can use any bead at all to go ahead and do bead embroidery, and you can use any cabochons at all and do bead embroidery. I'm going to go ahead and use a little bit of this green silamide because I've got a bazillion yards of it. Oh, I am. There we go. Give me a second to find the needle that I just lost, and it's amazing. These needles are getting smaller. It's not my eyes. It's
Right.
needles are getting smaller and smaller. And the size 15s are getting smaller and smaller. Another thing I love about bead embroidery is that I don't have to worry about what the back looks like, because I am going to go ahead and I'm going to finish it off with either a little bit of ultra suede. There's a little tube of ultra suede. Or sometimes I can go to upholstery stores and I can get upholstery fabric. Upholstery fabric doesn't tend to fray. So I've got upholstery. I know this is a little dusty and has some dog hair on it, but this is upholstery velvet. And it has a tendency to sort of have a background on it that is got glue, and so as a result, in this case, I could use upholstery velvet as a backing instead of ultra suede. So one of my favorite things, once again, about embroidery is that my back of my embroidery can look like a mess, and I don't have to worry about it. So I've got my needle threaded. And I'm just going to make a little baby stitch just to keep it in place in case that knot fails. And I've got some size 10 check beads here that I'm just going to pour out. There we go. Am I too far away, or do you want me to get a little bit closer in? It's up to you guys. Can you see that all right? Or
Yeah,
do you want me to try?
I
Okay.
think it's okay.
All right. Well, if it's too far away, then and just the basic bead embroidery stitch, which almost everybody here knows, is you add anywhere from 2 to 4 beads. I usually do 4 of this size. And if I'm doing anything like a size 8 or a size 6, I'll do 2 at a time. So I'm going to call these beads number 1, 2, 3, and 4, because, that's how creative I am today. I'm going to go down after 4, and I'm going to come up between bead number 2 and 3. This is the back stitch. And then I'm going to come out beads number 3 and number 4. No. And then I'm going to do it again and again and again and again and again and again. So I'm going to add 4 beads. So this is probably 95% of what I do when I do bead embroidery. I've added those 4 beads, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I come out between number 2 and 3, and out number 3 and 4. It's the easiest thing on the planet. I love it. I can follow lines that way. I can do curves that way. I usually will go ahead and use peyote stitch if I'm going to set a stone, but otherwise, this is what most of what my bead embroidery is. Now, just to make it a little more interesting, I'm actually going to show you a couple of stitches that are based off of traditional embroidery stitches. So this one right here is a traditional chain stitch in embroidery, which I'll show you first in traditional embroidery, and then I will show you how to do it in bead embroidery. It's exactly the same. It just, in this case, I've embellished it with a tiny little bead in the center. Now, the problem is that if you do it too tight, it sort of gets into a traffic jam. So that's the only thing you have to be careful of when you do this stitch, is that you don't traffic jam yourself up. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and thread a little bit of traditional embroidery floss first and show you the stitch in traditional embroidery, and then we'll go into how I do it in the bead embroidery. And then what I'm going to do is show you a stitch called stem stitch, which in traditional embroidery is used to outline. It's sometimes called an outline stitch or a stem stitch. And then, if we have time, I'm going to show it to you in bead embroidery, because if you do it in bead embroidery, it ends up looking like a little rope, and I love it. And I don't know if you can see, but it's got a little bit of dimension to it. You see that it's got, whoops, I'm off the screen. See how it's sort of sticking up? So it looks like a little cable. This one sticks up a little bit too. And it looks like almost like a little braid. So that's what I'm going to show you. Now, because this is a really stiff beading thing that I'm using, I'm going to actually go ahead and I'm going to be using a plier to pull it on through. Usually I don't have to do that, but so chain stitch. There are two different ways to do chain stitch. There's what's the forward chain stitch and the backward chain stitch. And I like the backward chain stitch for better. So that's what I'm going to show you. You start by making a stitch. There it is. Ooh, that was rough. We need a martini now, huh? And just do a little stitch. I came up and I went down. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up about the same distance as my stitch. And I'm going to pass underneath. Some people will either even use the eye of the needle so they don't pierce it. You're going to pass underneath that stitch you just did, and you're going to go back down into the same place that you came up. And it makes a little chain. There it is. Okay. Chain stitch a lot of times is used for a little decorative, stem on a flower. You could even stop right there and it could be a petal. Whoop, I'm off screen again. There we go. But I'm going to come down the same amount. There we go. I'm just using my pliers to pull it up because this is a little bit stiff for this. And then I go underneath the stitch I just did. There it is. You don't want to pierce it. So you saw that I used the eye of the needle. That's going to become really important when we do this with beads. And then back down. I'm going to do it one more time and then I'll show you with beads. There we go. So I'm going to come up. You know, sometimes it's nice to draw the line first, which I'm not doing here, but come up. Go underneath. I'm going underneath both sides. So the first bead, the first stitch was just a single stitch. And you can see that single stitch probably right up here. And then these are little loops of stitches. You want them to be all the same size. And in this case, I'm getting bigger as I go down, but you really don't want that. You want them to be all the same size. There it is. So there it is, chain stitch. Okay, let's do that in beads. Okay. When I do this in beads, what I want to do is I do want to measure. I'm going to measure and I'm going to make sure all my stitches are about the same size. So the first stitch, I want it to be pretty small. So I'm going to let that be 1/4 inch. And then each one, I'm sorry, not 1/4 inch, 1/4 centimeter. And then each stitch beyond that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it at 1/2 centimeter. So I've got my dots going on down there. Once again, this is 1/4, this is 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, 1/2. And I'm just going to do this the same way you saw me do with the fiber, only I'm doing it with beads. And then I'll fill it in with some pretty little drops, just to make it a little bit sexier. Right now, I'm being quiet because I'm threading my needle. So I'm going to start out by coming up and making my little baby stitch. There it is. And I'm going to add 5 beads.
What size?
I am using size 10 check, vintage check, but this will work for size 11 too. If you're using size 15 beads, then what you want to do is you want to make it a little bit smaller. If you're using size 8 or size 6, you want each of these to be a little bit bigger. Now, when I do these size 5 or these 5 beads, can you see that I've got a little loop going on there? Can you see how it's sticking up? It's not flat against. So once again, that first little dash that I drew, the first little measurement was just 1/4 centimeter. And then each one of these afterwards is 1/2. I'm going to add 14 beads. So I've gone down after 5 and come up on my next dot. I'm going to add 14 beads, which will take a minute. Okay, so I've added 14 beads. And so that I don't pierce anything, I'm going to use the eye of the needle, and I'm going to take that eye of the needle underneath that loop of beads. There it is. And pull it through. There it is. And then I'm going to go into the first bead that I added. So I've added 14 beads. And I'm going back through that first. There it is. And you'll see that I've created there we go. My little loop. Now it's a little bit loose, and that's good because we're going to be putting in our next loop in just a second. And remember, I said if you do it too tight, you end up with this sort of traffic jam of beads. So I'm going to come up on my next loop. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll just take a little baby stitch here just to keep everything together so that when I do this next loop, this loop that I've done earlier doesn't come loose. Now, I know this looks a little odd right now, but when I go ahead with my next set of 14 beads, it's going to tighten it up. So I'm going to add another 14 and go back down through that first bead that I added. I'm taking a little longer here than usual because I'm not used to being under. Oh, you guys have to tell me when I get off of the screen there. You'd think by now I'd be used to it, but I'm not. $13, $14. There we go. And once again, I'm going to use the eye of the needle. I'm going to come underneath. I'm using the eye so I don't pierce any threads. There we go. Give it a little tug so that it, there we go.
You're kind of sliding off the screen, huh? There you
There
go.
we go. So I've pulled it, and then I'm going to go into that first bead again. There it is. So you'll see that now this one looks much better. The last stitch you always did looks a little odd. So just bear with it until you get to, I'm only going to do one more here because you guys don't need to wait for me. But once again, I'm going to add 14 beads and go underneath and into the last bead. And then I'm just going to fill in those gaps with some drop beads. And you can see here, can you see the color through the, let's move this up a little bit. Can you see the color of the pellon here through the piece? This would be a really good reason to use some of that, some of the felt either on top like Becky does or by itself. But when I add that little drop bead, it actually fills it in. So once I've got 5 here.
And if you have trouble with glue, you can also just base the felt to the pellon.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do have trouble with glue. It's really. Now, some people, instead of gluing everything together, when they get their bead embroidery done, they actually use double-sided tape, which I always thought was an interesting idea and seems to work just fine.
I tried something else. I'm very amateur bead embroiderer, but I took my Word program and I made a colored circle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I printed it out onto this fusible film.
Oh, fun.
And
Look
then
at
took
that.
that and ironed it onto the pellon. And then I glued my little, center cabochon into the center. And then I'm going to bead around it.
And
Let me
that gives
grab
color
that.
to the background. That's a great idea.
Yeah. And here's one that I've done that you can't see any color between the beads.
See, isn't, and if you have that colored background, then you don't have to worry about whether or not you do in fact see any color. Absolutely. That's fabulous.
Yeah.
So I've got my
that's
third
another
one.
idea for,
I love it. I love it. So you can see probably here that there's a little hole. Let's see if I can get this underneath here properly. Where am I? There we go. So you can see here there's a little hole. And what I'm just going to do, and you can see my little chain going down there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some drop beads and put them in each one of those holes and call it a thing. There.
You're a little off the screen again, Hannah.
Yeah, I was making a mess. There we go. So I'm just going ahead.
It's okay. We can see you making a mess.
So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just inside of each one of these little chains. I'm just sewing a little, what is this thing? This is a little 3mm magatama, but any drop bead will work. So I've just gone ahead. These two have drops. Those two have drops, and this one I haven't done yet. So I'm going to do this one and then be done with it.
If you wanted to be really spiky, you could put a little dagger in there too.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun? Or
Mini dagger.
oh, those would be fun. And then there were, there's also prongs. Those might be fun. And if you do these, instead of doing them small like this, if you did each one like an inch long, then you could, or a ½ inch long. There used to be these spike beads. Does anybody remember those spike beads? Those might be fun in there and just sort of stick out too. So I love things that have a lot of dimension to them. And that's why the last thing I'm gonna show you, I'm not gonna actually show you the basic stem stitch. I'll draw it for you, but I'm gonna show you how that stem stitch can turn into this rope down here. Okay, so basic stem stitch. Here's my piece of paper again. There we go. Basic stem stitch is as follows. Using regular embroidery floss, and stem stitch a lot of times is used to do curves like this. So I've got a curve here. So if you've got your curve here in stem stitch, what you do is you come up here, we'll call that number 1. And then you go down here somewhere and you call that number 2. Okay. And then you come up here and you're going to call that number 3. And then you go down here and you call it number 4. So you always come up, and now 2 becomes 5 and 6. So you always come up in between, and you can probably see it here. Can you see how this stitch starts here, goes there, and then this stitch starts there and goes there? So it's just like this is basically how that works. Can you see that? So I like to come up in the same place, but if we were to explode this, the stitches would look like this. Right? Well, that's what I'm going to do to create this little chain. It looks like a little cord, a little coil. But I'm going to do one final thing, and that's that I'm going to put it over a little bit of my first thing that I showed you, which was the add 4 beads, go down, come up between 2, 3. So I've got my base row underneath this. So let me show you what I do. But first I have to thread the needle. That's the hardest part of this these days. So I've got a base row of back stitch. You can see it right there. And now this refuses to be threaded. Thank you guys for being really patient with me while I do struggle with this threading business. There we go. So I've got any kind of base row, however you've done it. I've done it once again with backstitch. This is the first thing I showed you. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and I'm going to come up right next to that base row. And I'm going to add 7 beads. It was nice seeing you, Joyce. Go. I'm going to add 7 beads. Somehow 7 turned into there we go. 7. And I'm just going to cross over it. Right there. Just like that. And then I'm going to come back at about the halfway point, and I'm going to add 7 more beads and cross over, and add 7 more beads and cross over. It's very easy. So basically what I'm doing is I'm doing a loop of beads that basically has a padding underneath it to keep it from falling over. And it makes this nice little thing that looks like a coil. Can you see where I'm going with that? So I'm going to draw that for you again. I've got my base row. There it is. Okay, I'm going to come up right next to the base row and I'm going to add 7 beads and I'm going to go over that base row so that it just, it touches it, but it doesn't cut into it and it doesn't still stick out. So however many, that 7 with that base row, there we go. So I'm going to just take that 7 beads and I'm going to go right there. Okay. And then I'm going to come up kind of in the halfway point. I'm going to add 7 more beads and go down, come up in halfway point, add 7 beads. So I'm basically just doing little loops of beads that are held up by that base row. And that's it. It looks so fancy, like this little coil edge, and yet it's so simple. And that's all.
So Hannah, is there a name for that stitch?
No, there is not. I made it up.
Hannah's clever.
I'm sure
stitch.
there is. I would probably refer to it as stem stitch, but what I've been playing with is taking these embroidery stitches that are traditional embroidery stitches and redoing them in beadwork.
Oh, okay.
So I just showed you something that I've been playing with lately that I really like because it kind of sticks up a little bit. And I have not gotten a chance even to write this down yet, but in the future, probably after the bead retreat, I'll be happy to go ahead and write these down with directions and then you can upload them to the Bead Society pages.
You know,
Great.
as you guys all know, there are Bead Society pages that are for just the members, and that's where they will be uploaded. Now, if you don't know a lot of bead embroidery and would like to do more, we're actually doing a project next month. Next month, the Let's Bead Live is September, October, let's see, we're in
October
September.
14th.
Perfect, thank you so much. And it is Lisa Comstock Bowling will be doing a beautiful project. She will have kits for sale, and she will be showing bead embroidery. I mean, I kind of just went all over the place because that's kind of how I work. But she will be showing a project start to finish. And let me give you a look-see at what that is. My computer is literally a dinosaur. So when I go to share this screen, it's going to take a while, and I apologize for that. So just hang tight with me, and oh, hang tight. So I'll show you that as soon as I can bring it up.
Trust me, it's worth waiting for. I saw it earlier.
Yeah, it's I know it. It really takes a while here to. Okay, there we go. Let's try. And we're waiting, and we're waiting, and we're waiting, and oh, something's happening. I probably should have sent this to you so that you guys could have. There it is. So I don't know whether or not she's going to have different colors, but I don't know if you can see my. Can you see my pointer moving around here?
Yes.
Yeah, you can. So it's got a cabochon, and we think this one may be real turquoise, but it could also be howlite. And then it's got some bead embroidery around it, which I think she uses back stitch, and then it's been peyote stitch. And then she uses some cup chain. We talked a little bit about cup chain. And then she's got, I think these are size 15s in here, and then 11s out here. And then these are 2-hole tile beads or tilas, depending on whether or not they're Miyuki or Toho. And then a little drop at the bottom. And I don't know whether or not she's going to be able to get into the bail in class, but I know that it's all part of the kit and it's part of the tutorial, and we're really excited to see it. So that's what we're going to be doing next month. And the kits, she said she would have them up by the end of today. So I will try to go ahead and send you, Jan, all the information, and we'll be able to get that up on the website. Now, also, I wanted, if you don't mind, I'd like to tell you that Diane Dennis will be our speaker on Monday night at the meeting. And Diane is from Northern Virginia, and her work is exquisite. So please do join us for that. Is there anything else I think that we need to talk about?
No, I think that covers it. Thank you for picking up the meeting. And
Oh,
also
sure.
the information about the Monday night meeting, which is a member meeting. It's on the website, and the Zoom link is even on the website now. And the Let's Bead Live information for next month, as soon as I get that information, I'll put it on the website.
Super, super, super. And, if you're not a member and watching this, consider joining. We do 2 things per month at least, except for this month. So every month we do a Saturday Bead Live, and we also do a members meeting. The Saturday Bead Live is free for everybody to join. So I'm glad those of you who are watching on Facebook, I'm glad to see you here, and I'll respond to questions a little bit later on that. If you had questions that weren't responded to, I apologize. I try to do that, but it's hard to do that and also talk at the same time.
Yes.
So I'll go back and so we have a members meeting, and we also have the Saturday Bead Live. But this month we also have a retreat, and the retreat is not next weekend, but the following weekend. And I will be in Minnesota for that, teaching tambour bead embroidery. I don't have a copy of my project with me to show you, but there are only 2 spots left if you want to buy a kit. Kit is not necessary. The full set of things you need is on the website already, as well as a picture of the project. It's a maple leaf. But if you did want a kit, I only have 2 left. And then the other thing that we do is later on this year, we will do a fundraiser. And at the retreat, I will be collecting anybody who wants to give donations. If you miss going to the retreat and want to donate, or are not part of the Bead Society and want to donate, then just contact me on Facebook or wherever, and you can send it to me, or you can drop it off at Rochelle, or anybody who is Rochelle at Bobby Bead, or anybody who's a member of the Upper Midwest Bead Society. Anybody is welcome to take part in the fundraiser, either donating, or later on we'll put it up live, not live, we'll put it up on Facebook as a silent auction, and anybody will be allowed and welcome to bid on those items. Last year we had tutorials, we had a kit, we had a couple of kits, we had a ton of books. What else? We had some finished stuff.
Yep.
We had wonderful things. Becky Pancake donated the most beautiful necklace. It was just stunning. We had some really wonderful things. So. Jan, you donated a finished piece too, didn't you? It was kumihimo.
Yeah, it was a Kumi piece.
Yeah, it was gorgeous. So, all right. I think I'm done talking now.
Okay,
sorry,
all right. Anybody have any questions before we finish up the meeting?
Well, thank
All
you
right.
everybody for joining us.
Yes, thank you. This was fun. It was very interesting.
Thank you
both
for
Meg and Hannah.
listening to all of us.
Absolutely.
Oops, I lost myself here.
Okay, bear with me. I'm going to stop recording.